Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Fail series, where we're talking to CEOs about their business blunders, the stuff they won't put on their LinkedIn timeline unless they come on the Matt Brown Show to share all their ugly failures. And with us in the hot seat today is the CEO of pCare.com, Dave Bennett. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matt. Appreciate you having me on here today.
Awesome, man. No, the privilege is all mine. Super excited to have you here, buddy. So listen, why don't you kick us off with the elevator pitch? What are you guys up to?
Sure. pCare, we're an interesting healthcare software company. We actually build software that runs in hospitals. It's really designed to interact with the patient while they're in the hospital being treated. So it's an area that they refer in the industry as a kind of patient engagement solution.
A patient engagement solution. Wow. Okay. So I'm in bed. I'm in a hospital bed. What does your platform do?
What it primarily does is it kind of helps you navigate through the process while you're in the hospital as far as healing. So we might push some stuff. You might normally watch TV. We might interrupt it. We might push some information about some medications that you're on while you're in the hospital. Right. It does other concierge things, like it might allow you to order your meals from the hospital via the bedside, via the TV. Also allows us to push patient education, so other educational materials. So for instance, say you're in there for a knee replacement, we might push some content in the form of video that explains things that you might want to do or you should do while you're in the hospital to help you get discharged, or things that you might need once you're at home to improve the outcomes of your surgical procedure. So a number of things like that.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And that company's been around, you said, for 70 years or something?
Yeah, it's been around for 75 years. The crux of the company originally, believe it or not, started in TV rentals. So back in about 75 years ago, TVs really weren't prevalent throughout hospitals. So the founders used to wheel around TVs on carts and rent them for like $1 a day so the patient could sit in their room and watch TV. And that's how the business was born.
That's crazy. Hey, it's amazing how entrepreneurial that story is, right?
It really is. So
it's nuts, man. Hey, they don't have TVs there. You got nothing to read. Great. It's like a headache pill. It's not even a vitamin, man. That's so interesting. So I'm assuming you got quite an entrepreneurial culture then still.
We do. In fact, it's really quite interesting. I've got employees that are still working for the company that are 40, 45 years in working for the company. And the company's changed a lot over the years, but still have that spirit of, remember in the early days when we were just renting TVs in hospitals.
That's funny. I'm going to use that at one of my dinner parties coming up. Right. So let's get into the meat and the potatoes. David, what is your story of fail for our audience around the world today?
That's a good question. I think of one episode, and I'll kind of share this. I kind of think about things when I was really young, beginning kind of working in the real world. So one of the things that I took on early on was a job as a salesperson. I figured, hey, I had a biology background. I knew an awful lot about microbiology and molecular biology. And I had a job working at the National Institutes of Health, which is like our premier research center in the United States for healthcare research. And at the time, I was actually selling biological agents like reagents and other things into the laboratories there at the NIH. I was a smart guy, relatively. At least I thought. I had a master's degree in health science. So I'd go around and try to talk to these scientists in the labs and sell them reagents and other things. Well, lo and behold, I'm 3 or 4 months into the job, and I'm not having any luck at all. I mean, I'm like probably the worst sales guy the company's ever seen. I probably read every book on sales. I figured I'd be pretty good at interacting people. And lo and behold, I just wasn't having any success. And I couldn't quite figure out, what do I have to do to kind of connect, and how do I sell into these organizations and to a bunch of scientists, very brilliant people as well. And lo and behold, an older gentleman who I'd seen all over the place was kind of walking around, kind of grabbed me by the arm and sat me down and shared some secrets on how to be successful. And I think many of those things probably span well beyond sales, and I think helped me kind of turn things around in that career, which ultimately led me to grow into the kind of executive roles that I've had over many, many years, because I was able to turn a failure frankly, into a success.
Mm-hmm. So what did that experience teach you, Dave? Well, firstly, let's double click on that. So that guy that pulled you aside and said, listen here, Sonny, what did he teach you? Like, what were some of the lessons that you took from that?
Well, I think the thing that was interesting is I had seen this guy, and we've been passing the hallways all the time. And he said, man, I've seen you around here. What do you do? And I said, I'm a sales guy. I'm new to this place. And he said, man, I've been here for 25 years. And he said, you look really beat up. And I said, yeah, I'm really having a bad day. I'm not been able to sell anything. So he actually invited me to lunch and said, hey, if you wouldn't mind, how about I share a couple of insights into people and how you could succeed. So as a result of that, I said, man, I had nothing to lose. I'm going to go ahead and sit down with the guy. And what he taught me was some basic things that I think apply no matter where you're at and whatever business you're in. One of the things he said, you got to think about the people you're talking to. When you're going to sell to people, you got to think about like what's important to them. And I said, yeah, I thought I had, like they want to do some experiments. They want to use my stuff. He said, no, think about this. You're walking up and down this hall in this institution. These people are here because they're not making a lot of money, but they're researchers. They like to talk about the science and the research they're doing. And can't you see all these posters up and down the halls about the latest paper they published in Nature or some other scientific journal? You ought to understand a little bit about that. And I guarantee if you go and ask them about, hey, can you explain what you're doing or about this research? These guys will light up and they'll want to tell you about them. It's not about you, but it's about them. And if you understand and show interest in what they're doing, you'll be able to engage them. And sure enough, you'll end up selling them something before it's over with.
And I suppose you were right, in the sense of, that sort of lesson is not the sort of thing you do in one role and then don't do it in the next. I mean, like I'm a sales guy, you're a sales guy. Most entrepreneurs are salespeople, hopefully.
Well, that's true. But you think about this, when I'm going out, I'm talking to people and scientific things, I don't have any understanding. Like, okay, this guy's talking about tumor necrosis factor. What have I learned about tumor necrosis factor? The one other element is you got to be genuine. So one of the things I said, well, how will I ever know about this? He said, there's this little institution across the street called the National Library of Medicine. If you do your homework beforehand and say, hey, I'm going to go down and talk to these guys in these departments, walk around, take some notes, you can go over there and sit down with these librarians and they'll help educate you enough that you'll have a little basic knowledge. So when you're talking to the guy, you'll be genuine, or the gal that's running that or wrote that particular paper. They'll understand, like, hey, this guy has spent a little time. He understands a little bit this. Let me kind of help him out. So that was also kind of one of those light bulb moments too. Not just a know 2 or 3 words, but to show some genuine interest and take a little extra time to learn a little bit more about it. And then people are more apt to really engage and talk more about themselves, the research they're doing, what's important to them.
Yeah, such good advice. So David, let's go back in time. Like if you could go back in time, to yourself before that you got pulled to the side and schooled by someone with a little bit more experience than you at the time, what would you do differently today if you had the choice?
I think that I think I'd be much more interactive with people and try to understand people and not put the cart before the horse. I think everybody, when you succeed, and I even think about this today when we do large deals and we're successful at that, I think a lot of it is really knowing the people that you're talking to, trying to understand what's important to them and trying to relate to it. Now, the one thing about healthcare that's universal that we're in is I think most of us that are in this field are trying to do better. We want to help people out, right? We want to do something that's going to benefit people, have better outcomes. Patients are going to live longer, those sort of things. So if you keep that top of mind with what's important and why people are in your particular industry, and always keep that front and center, and try to kind of build your philosophy around that, I think you'll succeed. And I didn't really realize that early on by any means. I was in there to sell something, and I never really thought about why are these people spending all this time doing research and dedicating part of that to their life. So I think knowing that and having a better sense around that earlier in life would have probably helped me succeed quicker, probably got there faster, and I probably have been more successful in some regards realizing that sooner than later, that it's not always about you. It's often more about other people, what they're here for, and can you create some common bonds, some common elements that you can share that really help build relationships that can then result in success in many areas.
So you seemingly have so much advice here. So I'd love to get you to give your piece of advice to other CEOs or entrepreneurs in terms of, the importance of failing in business to be successful, or potentially, their own relationship with failure. Like, what's your words of wisdom to them today?
I think the biggest thing is failure is not a bad thing. The reality is, I think, and you know this, Matt, from talking to other CEOs and that, I think most of us have learned from those lessons. What's a failure is to do the same thing again that results in the same outcome as a failure. And I could tell you, in writing software and doing research, there's more failures than there are. You can maximize an opportunity for a positive outcome, but I think about even product development with my people, it's a rare day that we get it 100% right? Now, we might create the scenario that we can make adjustments to get it right or build it better. But the trick is to learn from those things and learn about all of your experience, and then kind of take those lessons and apply them to what you do each day. And frankly, that's the biggest thing. Take those failures, learn from them, and don't repeat them again and again and again. And I think that other successful CEOs, the people that have taught me, look, I've had some spectacular mentors that have helped me be successful. And again, I think I've failed, and many times they've let me fail, but I've walked away with, hey, I'm not going to do this, or there's something valuable that I've gotten out of this, whether or not it's spending $1 million didn't result the way that we wanted, saying, hey, we're going to learn something. We're not going to do it that way in the future, or we're going to broaden the people that have input, those sort of things. I think those are the big critical elements that I think most CEOs would have in common to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, David, are there any books or tools or resources that you recommend entrepreneurs use or other CEOs should use on their journey?
That's a good question. There's not, I could give you a list of great books, and there's certainly a lot of them out there, whether or not it's Stephen Covey talking about the 7 habits of successful people. All of those have elements that are very important. And the real trick is incorporating those into being yourself. If there was one book you could read and be an absolute phenomenal entrepreneur, that would be great. But I think each of us are individuals, and each of us are going to adapt and take certain elements and hopefully kind of create a hybrid. But I would tell you, I think there's an endless array of books you should continue reading. I also think the other thing in many cases is listening to other people's life experience. What motivates them? What do you have in common? What have they learned? And some of that isn't necessarily in the form of books. It's spending a good deal of time around other successful, smart people. And that's hard to do. But I think if you can be smart and figure out how to do that, and you don't have to interact with them for a lengthy period of time, but if you have the opportunity to pick their brain and listen, that's what I would say. The other thing is, too many people ask questions, but never really listen to what the response is. And listening is really a lost art in many cases. I have a lot of people that ask me questions, but at the end of the day, I don't really think have listened to what I've had to say. So I think a couple of good books out there, interacting with other people and taking the time to listen and try and understand are critical.
Yeah, I think most people are listening to respond, not listening to understand.
That's exactly right. Or they expect a certain response, and when it doesn't fit within that, they either minimize it or kind of nullify it without thinking a little bit more deeper. It's like, why does that make sense? Maybe I'm not thinking about this right.
Yeah, absolutely. David, thank you for being on the Secrets of Fail series. Great advice, great insights and perspective. Thank you for being vulnerable in this series and for making a difference to other CEOs and entrepreneurs out there. So been a privilege hosting you.
Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all again soon.